You. I'm recording so I don't forget to do that. So basically, to make the best use of your time, Darren, the whole idea is this is going to be I guess, a video slash podcast that's going to go out to about, gosh, I think they have 10 or 15,000 podiatrists. And so we are specialists that work with foot and ankle. And I guess the whole goal would be for you to share about magnetic marketing in this interview. And I guess the whole goal would be we could give enough actionable content, like giving value first, that they would say, hey, at least I'd like to go there and maybe get more information if it's a good fit.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess the worst thing would be if it's a sales pitch and no one listens and, logs off before, but I don't think you'll do that. So
no, it's not how I operate. So
great. I'll get started here. Hello and welcome to Podiatry Practice Mastery. My name is Don Pelto, and I have Darin Spindler here, the great Darin. And Darin is with Magnetic Marketing, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Don. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, Darin, tell me a little bit about your story behind. I know a little bit about it because I've read so much you've written, but in terms of marketing and how you really got interested in it.
So I really have had high interest in marketing since I was probably 12 or 13 years old. My parents built a bowling alley before I was born, and I grew up in the bowling business. And my father would take me to some of the, industry events, and I would attend the events, and I'd sit in the front row. I was a horrible student in school, but I actually really loved business and entrepreneurship from a very young age. My family has been in a variety of different businesses, and our entire family's entrepreneurial. So I'd sit in the front row taking notes, and one of the speakers was a guy named Bruce. Bruce was my first marketing mentor, first business mentor, and he would talk about essentially direct response marketing for bowling, which I didn't know that he was learning from, another one of my current mentors, longtime mentor, and to some degree, I suppose we're not business partners, but we work together a lot, Dan Kennedy. So a lot of folks will know Dan. Mm-hmm. And Bruce was, a student of Dan's. So he was teaching bowling centers how to do direct response, essentially. So I learned from him over the years. And then when I decided to move to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I am today, I started with 2 bowling alleys here in town, helping them with marketing. And one was a 60-lane place and one was a 36, and we grew those businesses. And then I was there for about 8 years, decided to go out on my own, created my consulting company and Done For You Marketing Services. And we created Done For You websites, direct mail, email, blah, blah, blah. We created a system called kidsbowlfree.com. Some of your members may be aware of it. We've got 1,400 locations all around the globe that participate with us. And we've created more than 30 million new customers for our clients.
Wow.
And so we know how to drive traffic offline, online, all kinds of crazy stuff. We've been on Today's Show, Fox News, Good Morning America, all that stuff. So it's a big, wide program that we use all the tools in the toolbox. And then about 3 years ago, well, I guess it's 4 years ago now, my friend Adam Whitty, he and I have been a part of a mastermind group together for a very long time. And he is a student of Dan's as well. And he actually purchased the former GKIC, now Magnetic Marketing business from the bankers after the former investors decided to walk away. Huh. And Adam and I volunteered to help him out, basically. Yeah, volunteer is an interesting word, right? So I volunteered to help him bring back some of the lifers to the events the first 2 years that he had owned the company. And one thing you find out quickly about Adam is once you volunteer, you get more volunteer hours. So then I continued to help him out. And then it was funny, last January, literally right before the Rona, he had asked if I'd be interested in helping him in a bigger way, basically in an equity position, doing things to really improve the company, because it's a lot of work. I mean, people have no clue behind the scenes what happens. So he and I came to an agreement on what I would do and what I wouldn't do. And it's essentially evolved even more since I joined the team. But over the last 16 months or so, we've made some significant improvements. we're working really hard to, make sure Dan Kennedy's legacy is cemented, and we can continue to teach more business owners, entrepreneurs, direct response marketing, so that they're in control of their marketing rather than being in control, being controlled by, the Valpak sales lady, the TV rep, or whoever. So we really want to make sure that people understand direct response. It's made a significant difference in my life.
Yeah.
And I've built some cool businesses as a result. And we'd love to help more people understand it.
Yeah, I think I got introduced maybe even as a resident. I was reading some of the Dan Kennedy books because he's very prolific, and then finally I somehow found this, and then I've been the membership, right? So I get all the newsletters, and I've been interested in it. I kind of pulling back and kind of looking into this a profession. And I know you give examples in orthodontics and plastic surgery. I've seen a lot of these different examples. Let's talk about what's the conversation going on in the head of some of these professionals, like doctors, lawyers. What's the conversation in their head when they're considering it, maybe why they're not, what their misconceptions are about direct response? Is it the amount of work? Is it they don't know how to write copy? Is it they want it done for them? Is it they don't think it'll work? They don't appear what their appearance is? What are those things?
I think there's twofold, right? So one, when you go to school to be a doc, they don't necessarily ever tell you that you got to go out and discover that you need to attract patients. Patients are just supposed to come to you because they've got a foot problem, and that, because you went to a great school, you were really smart, and you graduated top of your class, everyone should come to you. Well, that's not necessarily the way that it works. Everyone wishes that would be true, but the reality is, if you don't want to become the marketer of your business, you need to have somebody who is in charge of the marketing of your business in order to attract, retain the highest quality, highest value patients. And, that's an important piece of the business. It is the business. The marketing is the business, because without the marketing, you don't have the patients. Without the patients, you don't have a business. Now, this is especially true for people who are now getting into the concierge level type practices where, they're getting paid cash instead of for, getting insurance payments. So this is super important. In those cases, you got to become a master at understanding how to attract those patients who are willing to pay at concierge type levels.
Yeah. And so let's kind of get some, I'm just kind of thinking about a typical podiatrist. Okay. I'm not typical, but a typical one, I think we depend on Google AdWords. Our website pushes like getting reviews, and then we get referral sources from doctors. And then, people come from the internet, and then referrals from patients. But a lot of that is just kind of it happenstance. There's no planning. I know another good marketer, Jay Abraham, talks about pillars. Could you maybe talk about some of these pillars that you would recommend? Let's say someone, me or anyone like me, you say, okay, Don, these are the top 3 things that you should do. Once you get those, then we can go to step 2 and step 3. What are some things that you would recommend? And if they want to learn more, you're going to tell them later on how to do that.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that you have to do is you got to understand how to build a list, right? So you need to build a list in a community of people that need their foot pain solved. Now, I'm sure there's a wide variety of pain issues. A couple of years ago, you might even know this person, Dr. Robert Anderson. Does that name ring a bell? He was from North Carolina, I believe, Charlotte.
Okay.
And now he's here in Green Bay working with the Packers, put up a really cool sports medicine place.
Oh, neat.
But I had a foot problem. I went to this gentleman. He's an expert, and he was able to fix me in literally 20 minutes with 2 or 3 little tests. Forever thankful. And he was great because he didn't recommend surgery right out of the gate, right? It was, here's what you do. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3. Now, I was like in a pain situation. So I was actively on the hunt to find a doc who could fix my problem. Now, if I hadn't been referred to him, what should have happened is I searched the internet, right? I go to a page on the internet and on a podiatrist website, and it should say, hey, here's the 16 questions you should ask any podiatrist before you become a patient. 16 is a number out of thin air, but maybe it's the 5 questions or whatever it is. That 5 questions should get my information, my contact information, because certainly if I'm putting my information into a website to request information about questions that I should ask a podiatrist, I have to be interested at some level, or I have to have foot pain at some level
Mhm.
in order to even go actively search for that. So now you have my information. So now the next step is you got to communicate, right? So step one is you got to have some, we call it bait or a lead magnet that resides on your website or can be used. I mean, I'm working with a guy, he's a member of one of our coaching groups now. He actually works with folks with back pain. It's all he specializes in is back pain. And he's a PT, but specializing in back pain. He's running full page newspaper ads. So you can run a full page newspaper ad to attract people. And then he goes them over to get a free report about, if a doctor told you that you've got bone on bone and there's no way to fix this, you got to get my free information. So they go to his website or they pick the phone up and they request it. So you got to have an offer or information. They request it. Now you have them in your follow-up system. Once they're in their follow-up system, then you got to educate them. In your case, right? Patient education is what most docs prefer to use over, let's send them a nurture sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't care what you call it, but you've got to be able to speak to them about their problem. So we were just on a call about some dental stuff and sleep apnea. Well, if you're not sleeping at night and it's because you've got your snoring and your X and your Y, hey, you should come in for my sleep consultation and discover. In this case, it's like, hey, if you've got foot pain, it could be one of these 4 reasons. Let's come in for my free assessment. It'll only take you 27 minutes of your time and you'll know exactly what's going on. Then you follow up again and you follow up again. And at some point, they either opt out of your emails because they found another solution and it isn't you, or they haven't found a solution yet and they're just on the fence and the pain isn't bad enough that they didn't call. In my case, I do Ironman races. And of course, I did a race and there's always the post race blues.
Toenails falling off and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've never had that, so I don't know what the hell causes that, but I've never had that problem, and I've done 6 Ironmans and a bunch of marathons, so I don't know what causes your toenails to fall. But in my case, your whole body hurts. You feel like you've been hit by a Mack truck for about 3 days afterwards, right? Then it kind of like starts getting better. And 5 days later, you're pretty much back to normal. Well, I had this nagging foot kind of, it wasn't like acute, but it was nagging and it wasn't normal. So I'm like, well, I'll just take it easy. I'll see what happens. I won't run too much. It was November. So it wasn't season. So I wasn't high mileage. Didn't hurt too bad. Well, it didn't go away in November. I'm like, huh. Well, then it felt a little better, but it still didn't go away in December. I'm like, this isn't good. There's something not right here. So 8 weeks go by. Finally, I picked the phone up, and fortunately, my ex-wife works for the Packers doctor here in Green Bay. And he's like, hey, foot's not my deal. We just hired this guy. He's the best foot doctor anywhere. People fly in from all over the world to see this guy. You got to go see him. Great. So he was a referral. But however, if I would have been on that guy's email list, it might have taken me 10 weeks before I finally said to my stubborn self, let's go see this guy.
Yeah.
So basically, you got to have bait, and then you got to have conversation, whether that's letters that go out to them or emails that go out to them, telephone conversation, doesn't matter. Something has to go out to address why they actually opted in. And then they convert, they show up for a consult. Consultation leads to a diagnostic. Diagnostic leads to, okay, Darin, 1, this is your first thing that we're going to do. We're going to give you orthotics. We're going to send you to the physical therapy lady. And we're going to do that for the next X number of weeks. Can't remember how many. All I know is that after a few physical therapy appointments, basically doing stupid exercises I could have done on my own, strengthening a few muscles, and getting these orthotics for my shoes, my foot pain went away in under 21 days. It was like, why did you wait 9 weeks in order to do this?
Yeah.
Step 2 would have been another plan of attack that didn't include surgery. Step 3 was, okay, we'll talk about, does this require surgery?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really kind of smooth way. Now, why is it that more doctors and people, is it because it takes time that they don't implement this?
Yeah. So I think, again, it leads back to, first, you got to think of yourself as a marketer. If you don't think of yourself as a marketer, you're never going to do this.
Or
You're just
I'm
going to
busy
wait.
enough. You know, I'm
You're
busy
going to
enough.
wait
I'm
for
seeing enough
referrals
patients.
from doctors. You're going to wait for referrals from patients. And you're going to just say, hey, Susie, is my schedule full on Tuesday? Great. If it's not, well, you're frustrated, but you're not too frustrated.
Yeah.
That you're like, what's the solution to not having a full calendar on Tuesday, full schedule on Tuesday?
Golf.
Well, right. What's that?
Go and golf.
Yeah, golf, right? Find something else to do. So, but if you start thinking of yourself as a marketer, you begin saying, okay, what are the reasons people come to me? I'm not a foot doctor. So what are the 5 reasons what are the 4 or 5 issues that people come
Let's
with?
talk about plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, ingrown toenails, things like that, flat feet, stuff like that.
Yeah. So you create 4 or 5 different lead magnets, one for each one of those topics, because the way you have to speak to them is differently, right? Somebody who's got an ingrown toenail's got a different situation than an Achilles, and is it different than a plantar fasciitis, right? So they're all different problems. So then once you create the bait for each one of those verticals, then you have this conversation, 3 to 5 emails or 3 to 5 letters about each of those, driving to a singular thing, which is probably in your case, a consultation appointment, right? Okay, they show up at the appointment. Only 3 things can happen, right? They say yes to treatment 1. They say no to all the treatments, or they say, let me think about it and I want to ponder the 3 choices you gave me. So then you got to have a system after that that says, okay, if they said yes, great. Now we put them in our treatment program. If they say no, they're considering treatment 1, 2, and 3. We got to keep in touch with them. If they say no totally, and you know that whatever their issue isn't going away, isn't it your responsibility as a doc to continue to inform them as to why they should consider the 3 options that you put in front of them? Because if they don't, they're going to come back to you in a year or 2 years in worse shape.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other hurdle docs get hung up on is, geez, I don't want to be too, quote, pushy, because that's not what I do. But frankly, if you think of yourself as, geez, I want this person in the best shape possible. If they're coming to me with a significant foot problem and they decide that they're going to do nothing, isn't it your duty to say, geez, Don, if you don't do this, truth is in 18 months, it's going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, and it normally does.
Yeah,
I like that. I think sometimes we get overwhelmed. You guys have mentioned that before. You get overwhelmed in the complexity, but you really need to just simplify it. And most of us, we have these things in place. We have these patient lists that we could use. 20,000 patients. You can send it to our current patients. You can send them, to the.
Yeah, and in the way that you have to think about it, so the way that I look at it is, okay, you got new leads that are coming in, right? Whether it's Google for plantar fasciitis or whatever they're coming in for. Then you've got people who are past patients, right? So they're useful to you maybe in one of 2 ways. 1, they might have another foot problem that you could treat. 2, you might have maybe physical therapy or some weightlifting, like you might have a partnership where you could generate revenue elsewhere. And 3, if they're super happy with you, they should be a referral source for you, and you should be asking for referrals on a regular and frequent ongoing basis. So in that case, what I recommend to pretty much every business is you can't be out of touch for more than a week.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I have that whole thing about not wanting to annoy them, but you guys talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, so you don't want to be selling to them, let's say, every week. But for instance, magnetic marketing business, every Friday we send out the Magnetic Marketing Minute. It's got helpful and useful information on how to improve your business, generally from a simple thing that you can do in your business to improve it. We also own a restaurant. So our restaurant every Friday sends out one email that talks about this weekend's special, along with what ice creams we created, because everything's from scratch, along with anything else, like how much money did we raise this last Tuesday on our fundraiser. It just keeps people engaged and involved. And if you go too long without speaking to them, the value of your list goes down, and it goes down pretty quickly. So if they're happy with you and you're not selling them every Friday, but if in your case, you go like, here's 3 things you could do this weekend to stay active. Here's a little foot exercise you can do if you're struggling with this.
Yeah.
this isn't complicated. It just has to be done.
Now, one thing that you're really good at is writing this copy. Is there any difference between written copy and videos? For me, videos are a lot easier. Could you just as easily do a video, or do you think writing is that important?
So, I think it's a combination of both, right? So some people will sit down and watch a 10-minute video. Some people listen to a 10-minute audio. Some people read an email. But one of the things that you can do is if you want to record a video, talk about these things, you can then transcribe it. You can take transcription, edit it slightly, put it in an email. And that's how you can really then use multiple different places. You can take the video, put it on your Facebook page. You can also take the audio or the transcription and put it as the text in Facebook. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this when you get at a more quote complicated level. But yeah, video is totally fine, but you still got to have a list to send the video out to.
Yeah, yeah. I want to just, as we're finishing up, I don't want to take too much of your time. I certainly want you to share more about how people can learn in the magnetic marketing, but I want to talk about one last thing. You've talked a lot about subscriptions and memberships and things like that. And no, I haven't found anyone within podiatry doing any membership or subscription. I want to share, or do you have any other, I don't know, any eye doctors that have done subscriptions, like an ongoing membership forever? Do you, any other healthcare professionals that do that? I'll tell you my idea after you tell me yours.
Yeah. So we have actually a couple physical therapists in our coaching groups who are doing like stretching memberships. So after you get whatever pain was ailing you when you first went there, now they sign you up for their, stretch membership. Essentially, you come in and you can stay. They keep you in alignment.
Kind of like chiropractic adjustments.
Essentially, right? So the same is true. A friend of mine, he owns, he founded Health Source Chiropractic. So Dr. Tom Sheck's been a longtime member, and he is a friend of mine, but he also has, he's got his chiropractic membership as a part of his business, but he also then has supplements which can be tied in. So if you have a supplement that you recommend to your patients, and you can find a way to honestly and ethically tie that into your practice, you certainly should. It's another way to harvest money out of the 20,000, because those 20,000 people hopefully don't have a foot problem again, or at least anytime soon, right? Yeah. The goal is to treat that, make them better. So your goal is, okay, how can I generate revenue from that patient list of 20,000? Well, one way is if you have 6 supplements that you recommend, or 3, here, I'll get you every month. It'll cost you X. You just stop in the office and pick them up, or we can ship them to your house. And that's another way for you to harvest money out of your current patient list.
That's great.
So those are a couple things that I would look at if I were in a practice in order to generate recurring revenue. And from a supplements thing, one of the things that you've got that the supplement stores don't have is you've got a white jacket. So you can say there's a lot of really crappy supplements. You go to the supplement store and there's a lot of really low quality, poorly done, crappy supplements. Here is why my fish oil is better than their fish oil. Here is why my D vitamin is better than their D vitamin. Here is why I
like that.
So that's how I would look at it.
So you ended up getting orthotics from this doctor, right?
I did.
So my thought is I've been racking my brain about this, and I was thinking, gosh, if Dr. Anderson had said, Darin, there's 2 ways you can do the orthotics. You can either pay $550 today, or you could do $12 a month and get a new pair every 3 years. Which one would you like?
He would have been wise to take the second option, because I'm due for some new ones and I'm just too lazy to go over there and get them.
Yeah. So I thought about the $12 like a month, because of $12 for 3 years is $550, and then you get a new pair, or an option to get a new. I don't know. Ethically, though, I want to say you have an option for a new pair, because I think the orthotics last longer than that. But some patients may opt to get them. And I'm worried about the ethics, because that's the one thing I really appreciate about a direct response. It's all ethical. So,
well, the best marketers are always honest and ethical, and they're not the scoundrels, right? Are there scoundrels? Yeah, there's scoundrels in all things, right? But the reality is I'd be happy to pay whatever the number is. And I don't care if I pay by the month or I pay every X number of years. And, hey, Darin, if they would have picked the phone up and called me and said, Darin, it's time for your new orthotics, it's $497 or $509, whatever the number is, I would have bought them. Nobody's called me, right? So they didn't have an alarm bell set up in their system to say, Darin hasn't been in X number of years. He needs new orthotics.
That make it just trigger something. That's very easy to pull a report. Who
It
hasn't
is.
had new
So
orthotics in
we
3 or
teach it
5
as an
years?
alarm bell, right? So when should your customer or patient should have been back? And if they hadn't been back, what do you do in order to encourage them to be back? And you got to set that up in a system so that, okay, Darin was in January of 2000, whatever year I was in, more than 3 years ago. We need to make sure January of this year, Darin gets a phone call and he gets an email and he gets a letter that says, hey, you came in because you had foot pain. You're going to have foot pain again if you don't put in new orthotics, and you don't want to stop your activity. So the way to solve this is buy some more orthotics. And it's totally honest and ethical, right? I'm going to have this problem if I don't buy those things. I don't want to be sidelined. I'm cheerful. I'm happy that he called me. I'm happy that he mailed me.
That's awesome. Great. Well, Darin, we covered a lot here. I want to respect your time. If people want to learn more about magnetic marketing, where would you recommend they visit?
Yeah, so the best place, just go to magneticmarketing.com. I would say subscribe to our weekly email that I send out on Fridays, the Magnetic Marketing Minute, and then you'll get our weekly emails. And then you also get an opportunity to get a copy of Magnetic Marketing, the book. It's free. You pay the shipping and handling. It's $7.95. In it, it describes magnetic marketing in its most simplest form. But how do you write great messages? Who do you target? And then how do you deploy with the right media?
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Darin, for your time. Appreciate that.
Don, thank you.